Stars Reach has put out yet another update in their pre-alpha called the Twilight update, and this changes a lot of things and adds a lot of new things. I'm Controlled Chaos, and in this video we're going to go over what all this update has. Let's get into it. First off, we're going to talk about tools and weapon capabilities and changes with that. They have added in the PQRV stats and adjustments for crafting. So what they've done is they have taken all of the tools and they've made the base ones that you buy or start with being the lowest quality of those. I'm going to talk about what PQRV is later, but they have stated, and we'll talk about crafting of those stats and things like that. But a few other things I want to get to is because of these changes, they've also broken down multiple of the tools. So, for instance, the Terraformer, it's now 3 tools. It's the Terraformer, the Depositor, and the Chronophaser. And the reason they've done this is they want to get rid of that whole entire tab functionality. So the Terraformer will allow you to extract minerals and actively scan for resources. The Depositor will let you take resources from your inventory and put it into the world. The Chronophaser will give you the heat beam and also allow you to erode and liquefy the different materials. The Harvester has been broken up into 2 tools. You have the Harvester, which allows you, the Harvester, to take plants and bushes, flowers, stuff like that, mushrooms. The Pruner allows you to grow plants and lets you prune plants and stunt plants on your homestead. Other tools that exist in their current form and their functionalities have changed to avoid, like I mentioned, the tab capability. These include the Xenoslicer, the Trailblazer, the Pathfinder, the Fabricator, and the Instaformer and Paver. All weapons have been converted also, but function the same way. So they've been converted to having those lower stats and stuff like that. Now let's talk about crafting and the PQRV stats that matter now. So the PQRV stats are as follows. P is for potential, Q is for quality, R is for resilience, and V is for versatility. And these stats matter when making things, and they give an example of how this all works. So you get a bunch of resources coming in, and you're crafting something, and you're choosing and looking through the different stats of the resources. What it's going to do is it's going to compare the stats of all the resources involved in crafting that item. So let's say you have 3 items you're doing. You're working with some wood, some ore metal, and some plastics. It's going to look at the stats of each of those individual resources, and it's going to throw out the lowest one, and then it's going to average the other stats together and give you the average of that. And that is the stat that will have for each one of those PQRV stats, which is really nice. The end product will create many different characteristics, such as you could have an item, let's say a Terraformer, for instance, and you can want to make it have a bigger battery. The characteristics that you want to have a higher value on to influence this would be potential and resilience. Now, let's say you have something like the Companion Orbs, and the Companion Orbs has this ability that puts a ring of drones around you. The number of nodes of those drones in that ring will change based off of the ability for potential. And that's really important there to note. And I think that's cool that they're doing things like that, because then there's some visual effects and then there's some behind the scenes effects that you'll only see when you actually use the things, such as the terraforming and battery lasting and stuff like that. And I really like that change, and it works out really well. And they're planning on making some changes and improvement to the PQRV stats and steps, so things aren't locked in place. And that's smart of them to do. Another thing they put in is on the space station, the TPL space station, they've added in 2 new shops. And these 2 new shops allow you to spend the in-game currency, the Klatus, for doing missions. And they've also moved some things around. So the things that they moved around is where the missions were at has been moved up to where the 2 original shops were. The 2 original shops that were up there, which were just for getting nameplates, have been moved to where the missions are. And then they've added in 2 new shops. They have the basic tool shops. This is how you get things like your Pathfinder, your Xenoslicer, your Terraformer if you don't have it and you're wanting to work on that skill. They have a shop there for you to be able to buy basic ones. And then they also have the Homesteader shop. This is where you go to buy homestead plots. And it's been moved away from the ranger and the camp thing. So it's not like, oh, you unlock the homestead, you get a homestead plot. No, you now have to unlock it differently and then get a homestead plot from the Homesteader shop. Now, talking about Homesteader and the change that they removed it from the Ranger skill tree and they've added it to the Architect skill tree. And that they say that that's the original intent, is to unlock the skill nodes that way. The purchasing of homesteads from the shop on the TPL station has been placed in the world, and we've already talked about that. They stated that there is no refund if you disband your homestead. You'll have to buy a new one. They're planning on working on that later on. They just got the initial stuff in there. Now, let's talk about terraforming and resource selection. They've changed the way resource selection works. Originally, when you would go into the prospecting mode, you would hit the Q and E keys and you would go through this sort of dial in the lower right hand corner of flipping through a bunch of resources. Well, now when you go to prospect, it's going to open up this window and you'll select the resource you want. So it'll give you the full list of resources on that planet and then you just select the one you want. There's no longer cycling through the list, which I think this works a lot better. This also applies to planting of seeds, and with the Xenoslicer and Harvester and things like that, you don't have to flip through when you're wanting to plant seeds or place resources, stuff like that. You now use that capability such as scanning. Now, another killer thing, and I love this, I've been waiting for this for a long time, is long-range scanning. I love this one. And the reason I love this one is when you're doing this prospecting, you're doing the scanning, it would, when you got to the highest tier, it would tell you how much of the resource was there, but it would tell you none nearby. And so you'd have to randomly look around and hunt around. That is now gone. It now does a cone and an effect from when you're far away from the resource. It will give an arc that appears and gives you the general direction to travel to that resource. Then when you get close enough, it will start showing up those cubes in the world. This I cannot wait to play around with and really enjoy. This is going to increase my mining capabilities and make it so much funner. It's going to make it easier to find those resources we're looking for. It's no longer a guessing game. It is now a logical, calculated way of doing things. I love this, and especially the way they did this. I was originally thinking, oh, just point an arrow in a direction. The fact that they're giving you a cone and a rough reference of the direction to go, and then once you get close, it gets you the cubes. I think this is a better way of doing it. I like the idea. Now, let's talk about some miscellaneous improvements that they've done. They have done a lot here. Let's go over them. First of all, we're going to talk about audio. There's a new audio cue you will hear when creatures aggro on you. The audio in space has been improved. There are audio cues when crates are rezzed in by the servitor during the FTUE hallway experience. That's nice. Now, combat. Creatures now properly regenerate health again after they no longer have aggro on players. The Cortex flickering is now fixed, so they won't constantly circle you without attacking, which is great. So beware of that they fixed it and made it better, along with the deer variant. Creature spawners. They have dropped and lowered the lowest form of each of the creatures from the game. Typically, they just run away when you try to kill them and stuff like that. The world spawner limits have been adjusted for the number of creatures to spawn per encounter group, and they're continuing to adjust them. Right now, you should see a smaller group now, about 8-ish in the same camp instead of 16-ish in the same camp, which is really good. This will make it easier for sort of soloing those white mobs and yellows. There was a bug within the world limits that was spawning way too many super low threat creatures, and that has been fixed. The spawner mature from one threat to the next at slower pace now. The more dangerous they are, the slower the mature rate of the next level is. And this is really great. So if you get a low threat spawner, it will over time become a more dangerous threat. And the bigger the threat is, the longer it takes to get to the next threat. That I really, really love, because when you catch it early on, it's going to be easy. You catch it in late game, it's going to be really tough. And I've caught some of those in the late game, and they are rough, insanely rough. They've also mentioned that kill missions no longer select the highest threat creatures. The combat XP has been boosted significantly in proportion for changes that are coming to the next update after this one. They're giving us some clues of what's coming for the next update. I love this. I'm sensing we're going to see some more new weapons. I'm hoping for new weapons. Now, they talk about the freeze and electrify duration caused by creatures has been reduced to 2 seconds instead of 3 or 5 seconds. The immunity to these effects are now only last for 2 seconds instead of 5 seconds. The heat and cold immunities were removed from creatures. However, immunities for bosses are more robust. So you want to be careful when fighting those bosses, because their immunities to different types of weapons have been increased. The consumables can now be used even if you are under the status effect. So if you're frozen or you're shocked, you can still use the consumable to get rid of that. I like this one. It allows for more tactical play and not having to sort of guess or quick time things. For me, that would be really hard to see. Oh, I have a freeze ray coming my way. I better quickly do this so I get the couple of seconds of immunity. No, I'm able to use it to break free of the freeze and stuff like that. Excellent change there. They have put a fixed on for overcharge timing, where it was sometimes taking much longer than expected. Other gameplay that they've made, you can now trade the in-game currency Klatos. This adds to the whole entire economy. So now you can go up to a crafter and ask for a specially crafted weapon or tool, which is really nice. This adds into it. So I can imagine that there's going to be bazaars opening up in certain areas, and I can't wait to see where they are. They've also stated that you are no longer dropping gravel out of your terraformer's hopper. Instead, you will be dropping tailings, which is good. I like this. And this is a worthless remains from the mining process. If you extract the tailings, all you do is you just fill up your hopper, and then you have to empty the tailings into the world. And they will eventually turn into dirt that will be of the appropriate level for that world of quality, which is really nice. I like the fact that it slowly changes And that's going to make things a lot nicer, and that's going to make Rodney's job a lot easier because he's been spending time having to go through and sort of smooth out and beautify some of the worlds from the damage we've been doing. So hopefully this makes Rodney's job a lot easier and he can focus on other things. You should now never again receive the incomplete item if you leave the basic crafting screen without hitting the collect. It will now auto-complete for you instead, which I love because I always forget to hit that collect sometimes, and you get that incomplete and you get that sort of green icon, circle icon with a question mark on it. It's like, oh man. So that's an amazing fix there. The public events weights have been changed so that some types of meteor showers like anti-gravium are now rare, and bosses don't spawn as often to make them more of an event when they occur, which is nice because I got so used to seeing creature, and then an asteroid, and then maybe another type of asteroid, and very rarely do I ever see the big, huge asteroid that just takes a giant chunk out of the planet. Hopefully things are evened out a little bit more, made more interesting. They also state that XP cost on skill nodes that grant sets were adjusted to reflect the number of items within these sets. Sets of fewer items cost less to unlock than those with greater numbers. So let's say you're in the architectural area and you unlock the first level of the Instaformer, and it gives you a huge list of stuff that you can build. Well, that's going to cost more than one that would give you, like, let's say you do the ramps under the architects, which is going to give you maybe 3 or 4 pieces. That one's going to cost a lot less. I think this is a smart move because the more you're getting out of it, the more it should cost. The less you're getting out of it, the less it should cost for things like that. They also have the toolmaking skill tree. No longer unlocks the basic set of fabricator pieces. That was an error, and they are now unlocked through the architect tree. So that means the fabricators such as the toolmaker and stuff like that are now under the architect tree instead of the toolsmith tree. Data issues with Brimming Moon, Blush Blooms, Gaduri Berries, and Ember Bloom Torch are fixed. If you are in a safe zone like a portal platform, you cannot place a camp down. Starting professions have been refined further. So you may see some changes with how your profession works and what you get and don't get when you create a new one. The icefall meteors no longer occur in space to prevent them from creating ice armor on the asteroids. And then they also say icefall meteors no longer deposit ice. The water spreading from them was deemed to be too native on gameplay. So hopefully they're able to sort of fix that, because I'd love to see the deposit of water onto these planets to create lakes and rivers and stuff like that after we've done some work on terraforming, manipulating the terrain and things like that. The skill trees have been revisited, mostly affected in the architects and tool makers skill trees, but mainly were many were lightly touched. Excuse me. There's a lot to read here. My eyes are getting tired. When they get tired, they jump around. The settler profession now unlocks the basic set for the fabricators and the stone block sets for the Instaformer. All professions now start with a low-end PQRV value set tools for what they're doing. And this is really good because then, when you get your collectus build up, you can go to a crafter and hire them to build you a better specialized what you're looking for tools for whatever it is. So if you're, a soldier and you want better Omni Blaster, or you want maybe a gravity gun, or you want to keep with the companion orbs, but you want to change the effects of the companion orbs. That's really good there and will help out with the natural economy of things going on. Fungus Among Us are no longer a candidate for healing missions. Granted, this was amusing but so wrong. The portals to other planets have been moved out into space away from the starbase. So that's going to be interesting. The user interface stuff that they've done. They've done enhancements to the HUD, the heads-up display, reconstruction, and it's not fully finished, but some temporary artwork is still in there. Placement assets aren't final. It should be complete before the next update. So the next update, we should see the entire HUD in its finished form. The FTUE screens you see during character creations have nicer fonts now. The announcement text that appears in the upper corner of the screen has been improved and motion added to make it more obvious. There is a sorting pull-down menu on the crafting and inventory interface that lets you more easily sort by name and PQRV stats. This will make it easier for when you're looking for specific stats. I like that change there. The skill node descriptions have been greatly improved upon to make it more obvious as to what you will receive when you unlock the skills. This is particular improvement for anything that unlocks a set of things like stone blocks, walls, windows, stuff like that. You now know when you look at the skill what all it's going to lock, letting you know the benefit factor of unlocking that. That's a great improvement. I'm always the one that I want to know what I'm getting. Decimal points were removed from the stack of individual pane. The first time you use a new tool or weapon after entering the starbase as a character, you will get a first time dialogue to explain it a bit about the weapon and additional details in the help screens. All help screens have been updated to match the new functionality. So when you hit that F1 key to look up things such as combat, crafting, and stuff like that, that has all been updated to match what has been put into this update. There is a series of fixes that were made to the game camera. So it should be better in tighter spaces. It shouldn't get stuck, thrash around anymore, and it should be able to zoom in and in a little bit more. Waypoints are now clear properly if you abandon a mission. So basically, if you do a mission, you're like, oh, this is too hard, or I don't want to do this anymore, and you abandon it, that waypoint for it will now actually clear out. Other changes that they have made. Night is slightly brighter, and lighting colors were tweaked, hence the name Twilight Update. After much feedback, night should be slightly less dark. I actually liked it being very dark. It gave me a reason to have the light room. I had no problem with the dark, but then again, I'm an old EverQuest player where I play a human character and it was dark out. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see 5 feet in front of my face. Things had to be right up in front of me to where I could touch it to see it. And I like that because it adds to the dangerous feel and gives a reason for adding the lights. But we'll see what happens. They gotta listen to the majority of the player base and not just one content creator's critiques. And I prefer that they go off of the base feel of things and also what they're aiming to do. And that's how they should tweak things. They've added in more nameplates into the Hall of Heroes plaques. And so you'll see on the space station that there'll be more plaques on the floor. They corrected an issue with the roof and arch A recipes not being granted with the skill unlock. That's good because that's upsetting when you go unlock something and you don't get what you're supposed to get. They also put in a fix for beams from tools getting stuck due to changing positions while firing. That's a good one. They have put in place some tighter limits on character names and use of punctuations in the names. There are some known issues with this update though. They currently have shut off being able to turn off the HUD. So hitting F4 to make your heads up display disappear so you can take screenshots is currently not working. They have turned that off. So apparently there's some kind of problem with it. They're working on it. And, for safety, they turned it off. Hopefully it's not a big issue and they can fix it soon. But I'd rather them play it safe than sorry. There is an issue with the fabricator tool where it is unresponsive until you unholster it and holster it again. If that does not work, switch to a different tool and then back again. Once it begins functioning correctly, it should work fine from there on. The pruning function on the pruning shears is currently not functioning. However, the growth and stunt are both working. That is all of the patch updates. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and I think you'll like this video next. Have a great day.